I've just been recording an interview with a very interesting man. Unfortunately, our connection was just so bad that we've had to abandon the recording. And I thought, what a shame, because I had planned that to go out the next day, and it was a fascinating thing. We're going to reschedule, so it's not really a problem. Now, I don't want to go over some of the things that we were talking about, because that wouldn't be fair to him, except that... isn't it strange? I just thought it was worth doing a quick video today on the idea that isn't it strange that all those things in the past that we took for granted, drinking wine, having beer, eating red meat, eggs, for example. All those things of the past in which we've learned, if we read some of the old farming books or the rural books, or even things like Enid Blyton from our childhood, from the 1930s, from really before all that period of time. All those things that used to be really good for us, those things that meant something, that keep us healthy, being with friends, being in pubs, having a chat, having a few bevies, in moderation, all those things, having a smoke of a cigarette or puffing the pipe, all those things that used to keep us going. Have you noticed just how they've been demonized? How so many people, professionals, are coming on the mainstream media, how the news is telling us these things are bad, you shouldn't have this, only have so many units of alcohol, you mustn't do this. Now we know, do we not? We know that if you drink too much alcohol, for example, like my mother, she was an alcoholic. She would be drinking copious amounts of vodka. And it was very frightening. As a young boy, my sister and I would come back from primary school and we would go, I wonder what state mum's in today. We were being brought up principally by my mother. My dad had left. And you do have to question what kind of a father is it that leaves two very young children with an alcoholic parent. But circumstances were what circumstances were, and I'm not blaming him as such. But there we were, and we would come home and we would see. Now, the thing was, we knew instantly if my mother had been drinking at home and what state she was in, just from the very first words, or even how she held herself. And that meant that the evening would either go in a positive way or a negative way. It was a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And just on that, I'm not saying that my childhood was wrecked as a result of that. It was certainly strained, and my mother did say some things to me, which I am sure in a sober mind she would have regretted, absolutely. But I think sometimes you have to go through certain things in your life, and they prepare you for things in latter life. And as I look back to where I was then compared to where I am now, and the things the subject matter that I talk about, I think actually in some way she did me a service. Not that I thought that at the time, when I was young, innocent, and somewhat terrified, from a mother who would flip from being a lovely mother, a beautiful mother, someone who I would look up to and respect, to somebody who became incredibly unnerving and uncomfortable and quite ugly in both her demeanour and the words that she used. However, that's an extreme example, and I know that many families up and down the land have that problem. But that doesn't mean to say that we cannot enjoy, say, a glass of wine or a good crafted beer. Now, one of the subjects that we will talk about in this interview, and it will come up very soon, hopefully, is just what's been done to many of these traditional, normal, everyday pastimes, things that actually were very good for us, such as go to work on an egg. We were encouraged to go to work on an egg, and now they've been demonized. We've seen what's happened with chickens, for example, how they're now trying to get everybody to register a chicken, and it does seem as if, well, we're going to see some bird flu come about in which people will be said, oh, you've got so many chickens, I'm ever so sorry, you've got to get rid of them. Now, my guest is going to tell us a little bit more detail about why that will likely to happen and the good value of those chicken meats and the eggs with it. Same with alcohol, and same with many of these other things. And you've got to ask yourself, how is it that we've actually got to this point in the 21st century in which for centuries, decades, millennia, that people have been enjoying some of those basic natural things that we take for granted. We took for granted was good for us. Butter, for example, was very good for us. And fats, we were told, were very good for us. And then all of a sudden, we went through a phase of, oh, no, you can't have that. We've got the phase now of red meat's bad for you. We've got the idea that that cows and sheep and pigs are somehow destroying the planet, that they're responsible for global warming. And it's our fault for eating them, and they want to eradicate them, these people. Isn't it strange that that's happening? Does that not ever enter your mind that, hang on a minute, history, even though history is written by the winners of life, we do know that we have been drinking beer, drinking wine, eating various things that in the past did us no harm and in fact gave us a constitution, an iron constitution, you could say. And in some cases, quite literally, the iron was doing us some good. And giving us the ability to get through life and through all the ups and downs. Now, we're being turned into these liver-lilied jelly beans that are eating just junk, with all the goodness taken out, and various foodstuffs are being demonized left, right and center, as if, don't touch that, don't touch this, don't touch that. How is it that we've survived? That's what I'm asking. How is it that we've got here so that we can even make those ridiculous arguments that certain things are causing global warming or giving us a huge amount of health issues? Is it not more likely that actually the things that we're being directed onto, things like seed oils, things like sunflower oil, which I gather was originally designed for tractors, not for humans, that bugs and all these other things, these things that we've been told we ought to be eating, we've got to have, everything's got to be plant-based, but not just any plant, not the healthy plants, not say the deadly nightshade family in which nicotine is in there with the bell peppers, the celery and the aubergines or eggplants as the Americans call it, or indeed the tobacco that has nicotine, because we're continually told that, oh no, it's bad for you and what have you. And maybe they are taking some of those foods and actually adding things to it so they appear to be bad. Yes, we're being told some very strange information in the 21st century, but we only have to look back, don't we? We only have to look back in history and go, well, how is it we survived? How is it that without the pharmaceutical companies, without the National Health Service, without the globalists telling us how to live our lives, we actually managed very well, thank you very much, without their interference? And yet now, all of a sudden, they're so worried about our health. They're so worried that we're not doing the right things. And actually, they want to inject certain things into us to help us. Turns out that some of this is not really good advice, that people are being affected terribly, that some things that are supposed to have caused us all sorts of conflagrations, if that's the right word, actually might not be quite true. Isn't it time that we started to think for ourselves and just turn off that mainstream media, turn off all those magazines and newspapers, turn off the advice from those commentators on YouTube and what have you, who have thousands and thousands of followers telling us certain things, particularly the celebrities who are being paid by numerous companies and have a vested interest in this? Isn't it time that we actually started to think for ourselves? Is this actually healthy, or is large-scale manufactured food in which animals are being injected with goodness knows what, or vegetables are being grown under artificial light in artificial soils with artificial pesticides all on them, isn't it time that we started to think and take back the responsibility for ourselves? I'm only asking. I know there are a lot of people out there who say, oh, Richard Vobes, what's he on about? He's talking a load of old nonsense. Well, maybe I am. But maybe you don't want to listen to me. Maybe you should be listening to yourself and to your gut and looking back in time and thinking, how is it that we got where we are, in which we're now so worried and so concerned about the slightest thing maybe hurting us, a little bit of dirt under our nails. Oh my goodness, I'm going to fall apart. And yet those people who work 12-hour days outside in the all hours of farming seem to have a lot of strength, seem to have a lot of stamina, seem to be actually, when they went down the pub and had a few pipes and a few pints of beer, seemed to be all right and were able to get up the next day and do another 12 hours of back-breaking work that we, in this day and age, would not be able to do. Maybe we need to think for ourselves once again and ignore some of this nonsense advice that's coming from the mainstream and those people who would like to run our lives.